We are in a series of messages during this Lenten season on the Ten Commandments, and we've been looking at the commandments that God gave to Moses and to all of us on Mount Sinai. And we've been saying that there is one God, one holy, almighty, everlasting God, and He gave one moral code. And so if we try to add to it or substitute from it, we are actually breaking the first commandment and being God of our own lives as well. So we're looking at the Ten Commandments, and I want to spend some time today on the seventh and eighth commandments. So here is the seventh commandment: thou shalt not steal. And then Martin Luther in the Catechism wrote these words to explain it. He said, we should fear or respect and love God so that we do not rob our neighbor of his money or property, nor bring them into possession by unfair dealing or fraud, but help him to improve and protect his property and his living. So we begin with the commandment, thou shalt not steal. And it corresponds in many ways to the other commandments. It corresponds to the commandment, thou shalt not murder. Because if you murder someone, you have stolen their life, have you not? Adultery, if you commit adultery, you've stolen someone's spouse. So the commandment, thou shalt not steal, is related to so many of the other commandments. And then it doesn't tell us really what stealing is. It's a little open-ended. You take the commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, it's very clear, isn't it? We're to honor who? Our father and our mother. But here it says, thou shalt not steal. So it's rather open-ended. What does that exactly mean? What is or is not stealing? I think you could put under the rubric of stealing, I think you could say, things like intellectual property theft. I think stealing somebody's reputation or name. I would think stealing a child's innocence would certainly fall under that. But for the most part, when we think of this commandment, we think of property, money, and things that people have title to, property. So now when you think about this idea, thou shalt not steal property, it seems to indicate that God is a respecter of property. In fact, in the 9th and 10th commandment, we'll see this again, where he speaks to the issue of coveting your neighbor's property. So it seems like when you look at the 7th commandment and the 9th commandment and the 10th commandment, that God is interested in preserving property. So it raises a question for me then. Does that mean that God is a free market capitalist? Perhaps. Just asking, just thinking out loud. I think a case could be made, frankly. God honors property. And but we usually think of this as money. We think of this as money. And money drives our lives in so many ways when you think about it. So many things are determined by money. We are motivated by money. Money has a way of really sometimes shaping us, shaping our values, our morals, our priorities. Money can be a blessing and it can be our destruction. Think about the phrases we use about money, the terminology. We say, for example, follow the money. Follow the money. What does that mean? That means when you're uncertain about somebody's motivation, if you're unclear about why people do some of the things that they do, maybe organizations, why do they do what they do? The saying is follow the money. If you go back and you look at who funds them, why they fund them, why they're deriving the funds and the money that they have, you'll have better insight as to why they do what they do. Follow the money. Money shapes our priorities. Money shapes our goals. I heard of a couple by the name of Paul and Liz. They'd been married for a while, and things weren't going so well. And finally, Paul says to Liz, listen, I think the only reason you married me is because I inherited $6 million from my grandfather. And she said, Paul, don't be ridiculous. I don't care who gave you the money. So money has a way of driving us and shaping us and determining what we do, doesn't it? Sometimes it leads us in ways that we don't expect. So it's fascinating to realize, for example, the Bible. Out of 38 parables of Jesus, 16 of them deal with money. There are, of the Bible verses dealing with prayer, with faith, there are 500 Bible verses dealing with faith in the Bible, but there are 2,000 verses dealing with money. Of all the verses dealing with prayer, there's 5 times more verses dealing with money. Now, why is that? Perhaps God, in His great wisdom, knowing us as He does, realizes very clearly that we're not going to handle money very well, are we? We don't handle money very well. We're not good with money. Money gets the better of us quite often, even when we try not to. In our community, sometimes we see something called white-collar crime. In our community, we don't see people who live next door to us robbing banks or holding up a 7-Eleven. We don't see those sort of things. But what we do see is white-collar crime. Not unusual to see somebody being arrested for securities fraud or insider trading or embezzling a few $1 million from a company or the organization for which they work. We see that from time to time. And these criminals, these thieves, they don't wear a mask and have a hoodie and have a gun. Instead, they have a briefcase and a computer and a pen. And they think no one's going to notice. It's anonymous. I'm online. Who will ever know? Besides, everybody's doing it. And they're driven by that desire for money. And they make a lot of mistakes and ruin their lives because this drive for money can lead us into some places we never expect we'd go. So the Apostle Paul, in writing to a young pastor named Timothy in chapter 6, 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we're going to look at verses 9 and 10, the Apostle Paul writes to this young pastor to give him some advice, and he gives him some very good advice in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. He writes this: "For those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains." Powerful word. Most people think, they quote this verse, many people I hear from time to time quote this verse, and they'll say, money is the root of all evil. But it didn't say that. Did you notice? It does not say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money. And when you dig a little deeper in the original language in which this is written in the Koine Greek, you discover that you could also translate it, the lust for money will seduce you. And so that's the real question, the real point here. Do you have a lust for money that will lead you to even give up the faith, lead you to evil, lead you off the path? So, God has an antidote. In the Bible, it's called stewardship. A steward is somebody who takes care of something that belongs to another. Everything you have and everything I have belongs to God. It might be in your name on a deed of trust. It might have your name on it at the bank, but in all reality and truth, it belongs to God. You and I own nothing. We are simply been given things to use for a season, for a while. We have borrowed things, but we don't own anything. That's the first principle of breaking away from the lust for money that we have to understand. We own nothing. And God says, everything I've given you belongs to me, and therefore I want you to manage it well. I want you to be a good manager, a good steward of what I've given you. And so He knows that we need money. That's why he didn't say money is the root of all evil. He says the lust for money is the root of all evil. He knows that we need money, and he says manage it well. You need to, don't go into debt, serious debt. Pay your bills, manage your money, live within your means. And then he says in his word, give some back to me and my purpose in the world. Give some of it back. It's therapeutic when you give some of it back. Because when we pass that offering basket, some people would say, why don't they just send us a bill? It's tempting. But we pass that offering basket. Why do we do that? Because it's a way to worship. It's a physical, practical, pragmatic way to worship. Because when you put that offering, those dollars in that offering basket, you are saying to God and to yourself, I trust in you and not myself. That all I have belongs to you and not to me. It helps you recalibrate, reprioritize to say, God, you own everything. I trust you. I give it back to you for your purpose of the world. And what is his purpose in the world? To take care of his world, to bring the gospel of Christ to the world. And as a congregation, we do that. When you put offerings in that basket, those dollars go around the world. We support an orphanage. We have for the last 30 years in Namibia, Africa, where the children are orphaned because of AIDS. And we have broken the cycle of AIDS in the lives of those children multiple generations now since we've been doing it for 30 years. We have teams that go there. We spend thousands of dollars there every year of your dollars. And we've raised up several new generations of young people who are now, some of them we've put through college and are married and have delayed sexuality until marriage. And we've broken the cycle of poverty, taking care of God's world and bringing the gospel to them. We have a program across the street called The Rock. When you pull out of here today and you see that building, The Rock, that's a Mount of Olives ministry. We own that building. Middle school, high school, and college youth programs go on in there as we give those kids foundation and roots and direction. Your dollars support ongoing ministry that saves lives literally from suicide, from addiction, from marital conflict, and on it goes. And we preach the gospel and people come to faith. And so when you give those dollars, you're doing what God is asking, but you're helping yourself. It's more for you than for him. He doesn't need your money. You need to give because it helps you. It's an antidote to the cycle of loving money, lusting after money. That's why he says, thou shalt not steal. Now, to be a good thief is to be a good liar, right? No thief announces what they're going to do. We're going to rob your house tonight. They don't do that. They're liars. They have to be. It's part of the trade. To be a good thief is to be a good liar, and that is where we begin now with the 8th commandment. The 8th commandment says, thou shalt not bear false witness, or thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And then Luther takes this and explains it in this way. We should fear and love God so that we do not deceitfully belie, betray, backbite, nor slander our neighbor, but apologize for him, speak well of him, and put the most charitable construction on all that he does. So we are not to betray our neighbor, lie about them, backbite, which is gossip. We're to apologize for them. Ooh. And we are to speak well of them and put the most charitable construction on all they say and do. So instead of being quick to judge people, in keeping with the 8th commandment and its explanation, we stop and say, you know what? Maybe they didn't get the memo. Maybe no one ever really told them. Maybe they're confused. Maybe, they mean well, but they made a mistake. And we put a loving outlook on our judgmentalism and give it some grace and give them some grace. But he says here, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Now, why does he say against thy neighbor? Why doesn't he just say, thou shalt not lie and leave it at that? Because what he wants to help us understand is an ethical process. When he says against your neighbor, to not bear witness against your neighbor, to not bear witness is to the deterrent of your neighbor, to not lie to the detriment of your neighbor. To not lie to the detriment of your neighbor. So what does that mean? What do I mean by that? First of all, this means that not all lying is a sin. Not all lying is a sin. Let me give you an example. In the 1930s, when the Nazis were rounding up Jews throughout Eastern Europe and in Germany, there were people, just like you, who would hide Jewish people in their homes, in their attics, in their basements, behind walls, creating walls that look like walls but are really closets hiding families. And when the stormtroopers would come and knock on the door and say, "Are there any Jews here?" and go in looking, "Are there any Jews here?" they would say, "No." They were lying. Did they sin? Did they violate this 8th commandment? No. Because they did that for a higher moral calling, so that they did not bear false witness to the detriment of their neighbor. Now, we have to be careful, because you and I will probably never, hopefully never, prayerfully never have to make those kinds of ethical decisions and those ethical choices. And so we have to be careful that what I've just said right now doesn't cause you to lie for somebody in addiction, or somebody who's self-destructive, or somebody who is destructive to others. It is all tied to the morality of God, not your opinion and not your desire. And those who hid Jews in Eastern Europe did so because of a higher calling to love their neighbor as they love themselves in the face of genocide. And so, lying for some people, let's just get back to it, to where we live. Lying for some people is a lifestyle. They do it so much and so often, they don't even know they're doing it. It just comes natural. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. They've been doing it so long to get out of a problem. It's just an easy way, a get-out-of-jail card. Very fast, can get out of the problem by telling a lie. Or they tell a lie so that they can do what they want to do, the things they want to do. But people are in the way. So if I just tell them what they want to hear, well, then everything will be just fine. The problem is, the more we lie, the more we destroy relationships. And the more we lie, less and less people trust us. And those who are habitual liars are really ultimately in denial. They've done it so much, they don't even know now they're doing it. But here's the catch. Most everyone else does. Most everyone else has figured it out. They've realized that when you've said 2 + 2 = 5, it didn't make any sense because of what you said 3 months ago and what you did a year ago. And they put it all together and they say, "I believe this person's been lying to me." Now, most of the time, they won't tell you. If you're the liar, they won't tell you. They should, but they don't, because usually you'll just lie again to get out of the lies. So it's a trap. You're caught in denial. And what's the antidote? Well, the antidote, frankly, is very simple. Tell the truth. Be able to say, "I'm wrong. I made a mistake. I didn't obey. I didn't follow instructions. I did my own thing. I can't go it alone with this addiction." Just tell the truth. You see, when we lie, the Bible, I think, would call it a shortcut. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 19, we read these words: "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only for a moment." When we lie, it's a shortcut. We think we're going to get away with it, get out of it. We ultimately get caught. In my family, our slogan was, "Liars are losers," because they always get caught. But truthful lips endure forever. In building a legacy of trust where people know that your word is your bond and they can count on you to do what you say you're going to do. That has value, that builds relationships, long-lasting relationships, where you have integrity that people respect. Lying tears it all down. You're really not getting away with anything. And so God's in His commandments is giving us direction. If we are wise, we will follow it instead of doing our own thing. Now, during this series, I've been pointing out that there are two basic functions of the law, the Ten Commandments, two functions. And I know I've said it several times, and maybe you're saying I've heard it already, but Dr. Callis used to say, repetition is the mother of education. So I'm going to say it again. The two functions of the law, very important for you to know these, is to teach society how to live. It gives moral guidance and a clear path for people. Secondly, is to drive you to despair. To say, well, I can't keep these. I'm blowing it left and right. Once again, you've done it to me again. You've pointed out all my flaws. What am I going to do? I need help. I need a Savior. That's what the commandments do. All they can really do in the second table is show you failed. Let me give you an example of this. I read a while back of a carpet cleaning company that came up with a novel way of selling product, kind of a niche market for them. They discovered that many people in their homes, when they have pets, have problems they're not even aware of. So they offer to these people who have pets, they say, we have a special piece of equipment that can help us detect stains and spots that your animals have left. Would you like us to show you? They say, well, sure. It's an extra fee. Sure, let's do that. So they bring out a black light. And urine has protein in it, even dried urine. And so when they turn on the black light and go around the house, they see their animal has urinated on the couch, on the curtains, on the music equipment, on the television, on that wall, on that carpet, and that carpet, and that carpet. And the people say, I want to move out of here. I had no idea. And not only that, they've grown used to the odor. They don't even notice anymore. And it's kind of our lives, isn't it? We go along, we're used to the odor. We're used to it. We don't realize what we're doing anymore. Until then, we look at the black light of God's Word and His commandments, and we see the stains and the sin and the brokenness, and we begin to realize, I need help. I need a Savior. Now, perhaps when I say you need to go to Jesus, you might be thinking, well, I'm not so sure about Him either. Maybe He's going to condemn me too. Maybe Jesus will condemn me too. Brennan Manning, who was a Catholic priest and a recovering alcoholic, wrote these words. If Jesus would appear at your dining table tonight with knowledge of everything you are and are not, total comprehension of your life story, and every skeleton hidden in your closet, if He laid out the real state of your present discipleship with the hidden agenda, the mixed motives, and the dark desires buried in your psyche, you would feel His acceptance and forgiveness. In the midst of all your brokenness, my brokenness, all you'd feel is not the condemnation, but Jesus' forgiveness, grace, love, and mercy, and a great big hug. And so the law of God pushes us to Jesus. He's your only hope. He's my only hope. Let's pray together today. Lord, help us today to focus on the empty cross and the empty tomb. Help us to realize that the only hope we have is not in keeping the rules and regulations, because we can never be good enough, but the only thing that will help us, Jesus, is you, your death and resurrection. Help us this day to cling only to the old rugged cross. In Jesus' name, amen.